And welcome everyone, and particularly welcome to the four panelists that agreed to join us, folks who I know have really interesting stories to share with us. You may wonder why I picked this panel to moderate. What many will not know is, although I graduated and was licensed to practice law 42 years ago, hard to believe, back in the dark ages, and the good news was there weren't as many laws to learn, just 2 tablets and you were good to go. But after I received my law degree, I always knew I was going to go into business and use my law degree for business. So I only formally practiced law for 2 years out of those 42 years. But I've been licensed every one of those years. And whether it was in business or consulting or finance or legal education, I can honestly tell you I used my law degree every day of every one of those steps along the way to my career that ultimately ended up in legal education for the last 20 years. So I'm a big fan of always saying that there are a lot of interesting things you can do with a law degree, and only one of them is practicing law. I've lived that, and I truly believe it, and hope that everyone will have an open mind as you move down your career path. So with that said, let me start with our panel. First of all, I'm thrilled to have Megan Reilly. Megan's the incoming interim superintendent of the Los Angeles Unified School District. She was from the Monterey College of Law class of 2007. Welcome, Megan. I'm sure we have a lot of questions about what does it take to run a school district like the Los Angeles School District in the pandemic. Maybe she'll share a little of that with us, but probably need more time than tonight to gather in that information. I also like to welcome the Executive Vice President of Sunworld International, Jeff Jackson. Jeff has had a long corporate career where he's used his law degree and also serves on our board of directors. So I'm pleased to have him with us as well. Welcome, Jeff. Isabel Dees is the Associate Vice Chancellor for Equity and Equal Protection at the University of California, Santa Cruz. So she's now professionally a banana slug, but she was our class of Monterey College of Law 2015. So Isabel can tell us a little more about how you can take a law degree into higher education. And last but certainly not least, welcome to Regina Gage. Regina is the Executive Director of Meals on Wheels of Salinas Valley. She was the Monterey College of Law class of 2009. And I'm particularly glad to have someone who can talk about the value of a law degree in nonprofit management and as a nonprofit executive director, because Regina is one of many of our graduates who have taken their law degree into that career. So with that brief introduction, let me jump right in and start with Megan. Megan, question number one, and I'm actually going to ask all 4 of our panelists the same 3 questions. So Megan has to start and the others get a head start. But first, Megan, if you give us a brief summary of the pathway that took you to law school. So somewhere along the way, I know each of you had a career in it before law school, but somewhere along the way, a light bulb came on and you ended up in law school. Number 2, what factors following law school took you into your current career pathway? So that's the theme of our discussion this evening. And finally, how has a law degree contributed to your career? So Megan, question number 1, brief summary of the pathway that took you to law school.
Nice to see you, Dean Winick. It's so good. It's been a number of years. It's nice to see Wendy, and thank you so much. It's such an honor to be kind of here talking to you and to everyone else on this Zoom meeting. I think my pathway to law school was kind of stemmed from my dad telling me, always study what you love. And I think I was at a point in my kind of mid-career. I was in the federal government. I worked right up the street at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, in finance. And I loved my job, but I was actually really wondering what things I wanted to do and looking for perhaps a career path. I was in a pretty demanding job. And so I also wanted to maybe kind of expand a little bit and bring some other interests I think I was a little bit of a lifelong learner. I gotten my master's degree in management at the Naval Postgraduate School. And I told my provost at the time that I really thought that law would be a great complement to my being the business person and the finance person, because, you know, there's a real synergy between looking at dollars and numbers and doing financial budgets and decisions. And, you know, again, making sure that you're following the laws that basically you have to, you know, the dollars are governed by. And so I thought it was a real good kind of compliment, and the fact that it was night school, it kind of fits so many of my personal desires to continue growing, and I thought it was good for my career. Monterey College of Law was so amazingly accommodating to kind of bringing, and I remember my first orientation to saying, what do I need to do and what tests do I need to take? I really wasn't eager to do tests or anything else like that, but the people at Monterey College of Law really made it easy for me to understand and get in and then enroll. And I met a whole new set of friends, and it was just a whole nother pathway that opened up with me, and friends to this day, many years later, that I'm still calling and talking, even though we may have moved various different jobs. But that's kind of what got me into law, was a little bit of like knowing that I wanted a career change, not knowing that it was going to be law or not, but it complemented the work that I was doing. And little did I know how much it really helped me kind of going forward. You're muted, Mitch.
You would think after a year and a half, even I would get that. So it sounds like even going into law school, you anticipated integrating the law degree into your existing career. So talk about, you started that conversation with your boss or those in management. Were they just as open to that when you finished law school?
Yeah, I think, you know, it was so nice. The provost at the time, he was like, Megan, whatever it takes to keep you here, you know, another 3 years, you know, as long as you stay, but you know, you don't leave before I retire, you know. It was one of, you know, it was a great team. We had gone through base realignment and closure. We had kind of like done a whole bunch of wonderful things. So he was extremely supportive of it. He actually, because it was a postgraduate school and I could have attended pretty much any one of their 40 degree programs for free. He said, why aren't you taking some sort of, you know, hard sciences? We need more women in hard sciences and math. And I had taken my management degree with the Naval Postgraduate School. And I said, no, I really think law is what I would love to do. I think it's something that I would really enjoy. So he was beyond supportive. And I'll have to tell you, I'm the type of person that I probably would have stayed at work until 7 or 8 or 9 o'clock at night, just because the work is ever kind of like demanding. So it actually helped me, this is the weirdest thing, but it helped me actually set boundaries for my day job was my day job. And then this whole kind of another avenue of, you know, enriching me and learning something new for me happened from the 6 p.m. to the 9 p.m. time frame. And it felt good for me to be able to do that.
That's great. So finally, you know, you've continued in finance for a while, and now you're the interim superintendent of, I assume, one of the larger school districts in the world. How does a law degree help you in managing that?
I think that I would say, so Los Angeles Unified School District K-12, it is the second largest in the nation, in the United States. We have over 700,000 students when you include our adult education, early education. We service not just Los Angeles, but we service about 26 different cities here in the Los Angeles basin. And we cover and span about 710 square miles throughout the Los Angeles County. I came down and I went from the Naval Postgraduate School. I got into K-12 education and still in finance as their CFO. And then you know, over a much larger budget and over a workforce of 75,000 employees. And I think the law has always been my friend and my companion, that whenever I go into, finance was my lane, but when I started getting into employee and kind of like staff relations, human relations, I actually think back to when I took the administrative law course, and I think you guys still have an administrative law judge on that you run that program. When I took the employee law courses, it helped give me a foundation in some of the things that I ended up getting more and more involved in. I came back to LA USD actually after a short stint up in Northern California over a county office of education, because the superintendent, Austin Butner, asked me to come back to help stabilize the organization. This is pre-pandemic. They had just gone through a massive strike that lasted for about 6 days, which is really disruptive to an organization when your people are out there on the picket lines. They had also tried to get a parcel tax passed to kind of like pay for some of the demands that were done. So there was a lot of financial strife, and the parcel tax was on the ballot and it failed. So this was all right before Austin asked me to come back and see if I would come help stabilize what was a pretty disruptive period. And it was his first year as the superintendent of this very large district. He and I mean, I think when you asked me about where law and other things like that came into play, we actually went forward and put forth a ballot measure that basically asked for, and we were successful even in the middle of the pandemic, looking at getting additional money to refurbish our schools. So we have over 1,000 schools, and we were successful in getting a $7 billion bond passed in the midst of a pandemic, because the voters understood that, even though kids weren't in schools, the schools and the infrastructure is so important to success. So I feel very, very proud about that. So understanding law helped me kind of like work on that campaign. I think during the pandemic, I know you guys probably have gone through this as well, understanding a new environment where the county public health is talking about health guidelines and, kind of rules around, what is safe and what isn't safe. When you're in the administration of such a large organization, you're kind of like writing policies as quickly as you can about these laws coming out from Sacramento or from the CDC, kind of like in 24-hour turnaround periods. I learned how to say Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the kind of like the director of the World Health Organization. He became my hero very early on when I was put at the podium to talk about what is going on and what does it mean to have a pandemic, and the kind of like just the fundamentals about washing your hands. So communication, things that you had to explain, things that I learned actually many times in the kind of the courses and the law school programs that make you stand up and talk about a case or talk about and dissect it to a fundamental core tenets. I took that and was able to kind of like bring that into the work that I was doing, both kind of like just coming into the organization and then also during the midst of the pandemic. So great. I could go on and on, but I know,
very impressive, and that none of that surprises me, but I don't think we always think about how many times the law intersects with those type of complex management issues, regardless of the nature of the industry. So speaking of industry, let's transition over to Jeff Jackson. And Jeff also has a law degree from UC Hastings, but I was particularly pleased to have Jeff join us because he spent a large portion of his career in the ag industry, which is something near and dear to all of our communities, but not just in traditional management, as in marketing and strategic planning and things that you don't always consider are you use a law degree to prepare for. So Jeff, what pathway took you to law school, and then how did you transition that into what's been a long corporate career?
Well, thank you, Dean Winick, and I'm not nearly as old as you because I only became a California lawyer 41 years ago. And I could probably retroactively embellish some glamorous reason for going to law school, but I had the privilege of making that choice. I finished business school and um, went to law school because basically I didn't feel like I had a complete tool belt to give me all the possible career options that I'd really, and to succeed in career options. So with a law degree, it gave me the ability to think critically and think laterally. It made me much more of a precise communicator and writer, issue spotting, etc. So while it was a long 3 years, you really end up with the complete tool belt. And so I practiced for 2 years in corporate law, and I let my father do all the advocacy legal work for the family. Um, and then I had the opportunity to move to Salinas and get into the ag business and launched a company there. And by 1985, I'd taken another job as a CEO, and through until 2015, I was either the managing director or the CEO of various ag businesses throughout the world. So my law degree, I used every single day of my life, whether I was negotiating, drafting contracts, understanding labor issues. Just it really became the bedrock of my success.
So did you really think you would use it that way while you were in law school? Or did you, it sounds like you also had a, similar to Megan, who knew she was going to combine it with finance. You had a business degree. You were really using it to round out your professional toolbox, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, um, I think it would be fair to say I probably never developed a love of the law. It never became my jealous mistress. Um, and yet I really enjoyed law school. And I gave I mean, I really intended to be an attorney. And while I was practicing, I was given the job you couldn't refuse. Essentially, I was asked, would I move to Salinas from San Francisco and join this ag business? And I said, no, why would I do that? And the owner of the company said, well, just tell me, how much do you earn? And I said, well, I make this. And how many hours a year are you billing? And I said, oh, 2,200. And sometimes I go home on Sunday. And so he said, well, I'll make it really simple. I'll just double your salary. So sometimes decisions are made for you.
That's great. Well, yeah, I think it's important for people to realize that a law degree can be a vehicle, as Megan said, into management in education, but you took it straight into the management and the C-suite in
Yeah.
agriculture. So it really worked.
And I wouldn't have had that opportunity unless I had the law degree.
That sounds great. So Isabel, you went a different direction. You took your law degree into higher education, but not as a professor, actually as someone representing the university. So tell us a little about your pathway into law school and then into your career.
Yeah, I'm gonna get super cheesy, friends. I'm the firstborn daughter of two firstborn humans who immigrated to this country. And I grew up with a profound sense of community and service. And I was the first to go to college in my family, and it was hard, y'all. I'm not gonna, make it sugarcoat it. It was really hard, and it was hard in ways that it didn't need to be hard, right? That I found myself often saying, like, but why did we have to say it this way? And I had a love-hate relationship with the law, because law is about service, but legalese sucks. And I felt like I needed to decode that language, right? Because it literally rules the world. It is the foundation. It is the code to the matrix, like whatever is going to speak to you, whatever metaphor, right? And I really felt a profound calling to serve in my community. And I felt at a disadvantage to be able to serve to like my utmost capacity if I didn't know the rules of the game. And so the law called to me. And sometimes, when the law calls, you call back and you say, hey, friend. And as I was exploring different law schools that I could attend, I didn't want to have to choose between the career I was starting in higher ed, doing educational advocacy, specifically with American Disabilities Act and supporting students in getting reasonable accommodations so they could successfully and fully participate in school. And I didn't want to choose between time with my family and also like doing this thing with the law. And MCL is amazing in that it's like multimodal. It offers curriculum over the summer. You could come after work. And, some people watched every season of Game of Thrones. I went to law school. And, we all make choices about how we invest our time, how we spend our time. And I decided that I wanted to work on me, and I wanted to develop that toolkit for how I could be in community and be of service to my community in ways that were more meaningful and more profound. Another reason why I picked Monterey College of Law is because it's a community law school, right? Like I wasn't trying to go to DC. I wanted to be here with the people here. And I wanted to connect with professionals here already, right? I didn't want to go spend 3 years or 4 years somewhere else and come back a new me and then work on those relationships. I wanted to connect now with community and with professionals. And coming to MCL meant both that I got to be in community, but also that showing up to class every day is kind of a job interview, y'all. It is a community school, but those folks teaching you, those folks in the office, Wendy, those are professionals in the community. When people call Dean Winick for a reference, there's years of relationships already established, right? We're all from small communities, and it is hard for people to forget you here. So it's a fantastic opportunity to make a giant impact. My professors remember me. I was at my job interview for my current position, for example, Isabel Bjork, who for a while ran the Mandel Gazette Center, where a lot of our clinicals are held at the Monterey campus, was one of the folks in the audience in my public presentation. We gotta, us public people gotta convince the humans that we're the right person for the job. And she afterwards was like, I remember you from moot court. You made such a compelling argument. And it was so validating to hear that I was remembered in the community by the folks that taught me. And there's a kind of investment, right? You want your people to do well, and you want to make the MCL family your people, right? We root for each other. And so since I had no plans to go anywhere else, it felt like such a natural and smart choice to be here and learn from the people already here and to have them be invested in my success, right? And that was the third thing that really informed my decision to come to MCL and to law school, is that, that thing that we see on TV on How to Get Away with Murder and, Legally Blonde, look to one side, look to the other, a third of you will be gone, right? That's not how we do it here. We are committed to your success. That person next to you, that's your family, right? You may not know when you'll be sitting across the interview table from those folks, and you will be. It's a tiny, tiny town. It is a tiny, tiny community. And when folks see MCL on your resume, they know 2 or 3 people, right? They know a judge. They know someone that they sit with on the board. There is so much goodwill in this community for all the lovely work that humans do who come to this school. And I was like, yeah, that's the community I want to be a part of. That is the legacy of service that I want to be associated with, right? And then the other thing that I really, really loved, and this is like super cheesy, is that at the time that I came to MCL, we did not require a BA or a BS. We took equivalent credits. We did not have a minimum pass score. And being a community school and being an opportunity school means that people get to be their whole selves. So for example, in my cohort, a woman who had become a mother very young and taken a position as in a law office as a secretary, and then moved on, to the extent that she could. And she'd been in that office for 25 years, like shadow writing for petitions, and taking those filings down to the courtroom. She was in my class, right? She was in my class, and her experience mattered. And that was important to me. It was important to me to be a part of a legal community that saw value in every member of the community, right? And for me, it was like, if I want to speak back to the law, if I want the law to work for me and to work for my community and to learn legalese so I could translate, either to help folks understand what is required of them, or what the heck does that policy mean? I wanted to also like speak back to the law and say, yo, friends, speaking plainly is an ethical choice that centers people wholly and is an inclusive practice, right? And saying that without a JD at the end of your name, as the youth say, hits different, right? It just does. It hits different, right? You earn your voice. You speak with some authority. And I knew that doing compliance, specifically compliance work in higher ed, needed that gravitas, that like I knew that I knew what needed to be said, right? I knew that I had a voice and that I had something to contribute specifically in that field. And the reason that I wanted to focus on education and compliance is because nothing is more transformative and more directly tied to economic justice and social mobility than education. Right. And so I told you I was going to be really sappy. I just wanted to make a difference. And the law seemed to be the best way to get me there.
Well, thank you. That's excellent. And you actually, I had several follow-up questions for you, and you answered and hit every single one of them before I could ask them. So you're making it very hard as a moderator to sound intelligent, because you already jumped ahead. But thank you. Regina, you talked about service, and a number of you have talked about the passion to service and making a difference. And Regina Gage took her law degree clearly back into the community and has worked in the nonprofit field. So Regina, talk to us a little about your pathway to law and then your decision to, again, give back in a slightly different way, but directly through nonprofit service to the community.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. And thank you for inviting me. And congratulations to all of you who are either currently in law school or thinking about law school. It's obviously a huge commitment. So I think of 2 words, Dean Winick, when I had been thinking about law school for quite some time, but the 2 words are math and science. I knew I was not good in those areas. No, seriously, I had been thinking about law school for a long time because it's always been important to me to advocate for those who, don't have a voice. As cliched as that sound, I truly believe that. The invisible members of our community, the underserved members. I had worked as a CFO for a nonprofit taking care of troubled children who had been removed from their homes because of, shocking levels of abuse. And again, I had been thinking about law school. It was the commitment of it that was a little overwhelming. I didn't go to law school right out of college. I took a longer route to make my decision. And then when I did decide, I decided to apply to Monterey College of Law. I initially thought I wanted to go into criminal law or family law because, again, I thought it was really important to advocate for people who did not have the opportunity. So I had already been in the nonprofit world. I went to law school full-time, of course, as all of you have done or will do, and worked full-time. And now I look back and I think, I don't know how I did that. It's like 9 o'clock. I have to go to bed now. But somehow when you make that commitment, you have to give up the parties and the different events and the concerts and make that commitment to go to law school. But I knew that it was something that I'd always thought about doing. And I thought it was a noble endeavor, even though, you know, attorneys have horrible reputations. The law has been, unfortunately, misused. I wish I could say that it was always used properly, but I don't think that's the case. But at the end of the day, I think it's a very noble profession. So that's what led me to go to MCL.
And then talk a little about, have you used your law degree as an executive director of a number of different nonprofits?
Absolutely. Well, after graduating from MCL, my plan was to go to law school, you know, get my JD, and then go into politics. And I thought I'll practice law for a while and then go into politics, but that's a whole other story. And I'm sort of involved locally in politics. I even ran against a judge, and that was quite an interesting endeavor. But I have used my law degree, and I think I worked for the Monterey County Bar Association. Actually, I was their executive director and reported to a 17-member board of attorneys, which was, I know Wendy and Dean Winick obviously were there when I was the executive director. That's a whole other education, reporting to a group of attorneys, but almost on a regular basis, I use my law degree. And I think the education it provides you is so broad and so fascinating. I mean, there are obviously some people love contract law. I wanted to, you know, put sharp daggers into my eyes. I love constitutional law. I love tort. I think it encompasses almost every aspect of our society. And it's fascinating to me. So I used my law degree while I was at Monterey College of Law, while I was at the Monterey County Bar Association. I used it while I was the CFO working for a nonprofit in San Jose, which took care of troubled children. I was a legal advocate at one point, helping domestic violence victims seek restraining orders against their perpetrators. And now, as the executive director for Meals on Wheels of the Salinas Valley, I use it, you know, with contracts for the county, with employment law, you know, just about every aspect of my job, I think has been enhanced by having a JD. And I also will say that I think once you have a law degree, there is a certain level of prestige to that. I mean, it shows, maybe you're a little insane to even go get a law degree, but I think it shows seriously a certain level of commitment and perseverance. I'm not sure what the percentages are, but I know that, you know, we had a fairly large class, and at the end of the 3.5 years, you look around and, you know, 25 or 30% of the people have left for various reasons. It had nothing to do with their intelligence. It's just kind of life intervened. So I think it is a prestigious degree to have, and it has opened many doors for me having that degree.
And on that point, let me just circle back to Jeff for a second. So, because Jeff, you've had a long executive career. Does it still come up that you're a lawyer? I mean, you've had far more, 2 years as a lawyer and for almost 40 years as an executive, but does that still come up in conversations and in your work environment? You're muted.
After doing this 8 hours a day. Yeah,
that's right.
Every single day. And a lot of my work, because of my background, is mergers and acquisition work, expanding businesses. So it's also like the Mikey cereal eating commercial is they look around when it gets too tough and go up, give it to Jeff, he'll do it.
That's amazing. And Megan, same question. You know, that I know you testify and you're asked to opine on those things, but do you think on a regular basis, is it in the back of their mind, or does it come up that you have a JD?
You know, I think something that Isabel talked about, and I think Regina also mentioned, there's a gravitas that basically your words matter. And I will say it's not that it's front and center in my world that, you know, I have a JD. I think it is something that I've been poignantly reminded of this year, in the fact that, you know, there were not any laws that basically address the situation that we were under with the pandemic. And so when our district basically that has 600,000 kids that we serve, and 80% of them are children of poverty that are under free and reduced lunch, we chose to feed everyone. And so there's no law out there that says you can use this money from the taxpayer and you can feed everyone. We didn't ask for identification. We didn't ask, and we did it from March until just, a few months ago. And so 120 million meals every single day to the community of LA. And so there's a certain part that the law gives you an understanding when it's not filled in of what the judgments are that you have to make to do the right things, and then you go and you try and get Sacramento or whatever to recognize the laws and what you've done and actually fund it or do something else like that. So, I mean, I think that it comes up, like Jeff says, every single day in so many ways that you just can't even put your finger on, but there's really poignant ways that you can change, kind of like the role that you're in, the job that you do by influencing, by using law and logic, kind of like even with the laws haven't yet been written for the situation that you're in. And I think that's where it's most meaningful for me in the current role that I have right now.
That's great. So Isabel, you talked about the idea that there's a certain power you feel like you have having that JD in your policy work. But let me turn it the other way. Do you think you frame your arguments to utilize that power and authority differently? You were already on a pathway to advocacy before law school, but now you're a lawyer. So do you think you frame it differently than you might have had you not gone to law school?
I mean, yeah, I definitely leveled up, right? Like there's the one thing of being persuasive and speaking with your heart and talking about what's right, but being able to, so for example, in our clinicals, we learn about invitational interviewing and making sure that folks, it's to be able to share with folks information about their rights and options, right? So when you're assessing the merits of the case, it's a fancy way for saying what happened and what can we do about it, right? But having that framework of being able to hear for material information and then being able to take someone's experience and frame it like you shared 1, 2, 3 based on what you've shared, a pattern of behavior, impact that has deprived you of access, right? So being able to put it within the framework of the law, then both validates a person's experience if you move forward with an investigation for. I think I skipped saying what equity and equal protection is. I made some assumptions. In my role, my office is responsible for responding to complaints and concerns related to harassment and discrimination on the basis of all protected identity categories, including Title IX response in higher ed. So every conversation that I have is deeply human, but needs to be framed within a legal analysis, right? So literally every email I write, every conversation I have, every I every day write objective memos. Every day I write persuasive memos. Every day is 10 practical exams back to back to back to back, right? Learning about ethics to make sure you have timely communication with folks. That's literally okay, I sharing a case update with you that we're here, here's where we are in the process. Can I connect with you? How do I help you understand? So there literally is, although I'm not doing legal advocacy and I'm not employed as an attorney, there is no aspect of my job that isn't 100% touched by analytical frameworks, by writing skills, right? And then that ability to translate, even when we're talking to each other in class, we're but what does that mean? Well, why couldn't they have said it that way? I get to choose to say it that way, right? So instead of sticking to the legalese when I'm communicating with the folks and the students that I serve, at moments of serious distress and trauma, I get to speak plainly, I get to liaise between the law, rights, and options. So there just is not a moment I'm not a JD.
Very good. Yeah, I don't find any of that surprising, and all of you have had that theme that even though you may think, as I think Jeff and I did at one point, that we escaped the law to go do other things, we didn't really escape the law. It followed us every day of our career. Let me turn it out to the audience now, because you've heard four very different presentations about different pathways with a law degree. What questions do you have for our panelists? And as you know, I teach law as well, so I'm happy to call on you if you don't voluntarily come up with questions.
So again, at this point, if you have a question, and actually if you have your camera on, you are more than welcome to raise your hand. You can use the reaction button at the bottom, or you can chat it.
All right, Michael.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you guys so much for your time today. I have a few questions, but this is really interesting. And so I think I'd like to start with Ms. Gage for my first question. And Ms. Gage, my question is, you have some sort of crossover in, you mentioned that you had some interest in politics, and then it looked like you wound up maybe in an erstwhile sense in politics after the fact, or perhaps because of the fact, but in any case. My question specifically is about legislation and regulation, and if your role employs any of those pursuits, but from the strength of your legal education.
Thank you, Michael. Actually, I did run for county supervisor and was unsuccessful. It was an incredible experience, and I thought that having a law degree would be really helpful to be able to understand legislation and bills being passed. And in my role as ED for Meals on Wheels, I mean, there's a lot of advocacy that we have to do, not only to the California Department of Aging, but all the way up to the federal government to continue to receive funding. So after my unsuccessful run for Board of Supervisors about 2.5 years ago, I was asked to run for the hospital board, Salinas Valley Memorial Healthcare District, which is technically an elected position. So I did run for that within a couple months. People thought I was insane, but it seemed like the right thing to do at the right time. And I was successful. I had an opponent. I mean, you know, you're talking a voluntary position. People raised tens of thousands of dollars to run for this position. And now I serve on the hospital board, which is hugely regulated and legislated. So I find that it's been really helpful just to be able to understand the legalese, which isn't the most fascinating type of writing, but it's important to at least be able to grasp the concept. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. And have you ever been involved in writing or drafting legislation, out of curiosity, or regulation for that matter?
No, I guess I could say I was involved in writing the review for the current CEO of the Salinas Valley Hospital. Somehow it fell on my lap, but I wouldn't really consider that legislation. But considering it's a $700 million entity, it sure felt like I was writing it. But to answer your question, no, I've not been directly involved in that.
Just curious on that, and that's very interesting. Thank you very much. I appreciate that perspective.
All right, thank you.
Who else has a question for one of our panelists? Stephanie.
So I don't know if it's so much as a question for one specific person, but so I guess I've been contemplating on whether or not the JD would be the most beneficial route to go, as I'm already a licensed clinical social worker. And in doing this work, I've come across many situations where I feel the system was a little unjust to the children in our community. And so then I feel like, oh, you know, I need to get my hands on that and figure out a way to help support these kids and in more depth, I guess. But then I feel like at the same time, I'm like, wait, I don't want to be a lawyer like at all. I don't want to work past like 4:30. And I love my time. And, you know, and especially being someone who teaches people how to be mindful and self-care as a priority, I think to myself, like, although I have a very strong passion for law and everything that it entails, I'm worried that I would be like in a position where I'd be unhappy because the amount of work that would be put on me. just because of like that, I guess, having the JD. But I will say, I don't know if that is true or not. These are my assumptions and they're all just, I'm an overthinker. But is that kind of like what happens with it? I'm in education, by the way, too. I'm a mental health clinician for the school district. And so I absolutely love it. And I mean, I will be a little bit honest, it's a little easy. So then I feel like I'm kind of cheating myself because I don't feel challenged. I don't know if that's normal either.
Well, Stephanie, let me, so I know these other panelists well enough to know that we probably all share a similar failure. We are fascinated by what we do and we're drawn into doing it. And I don't think any of us live in a 9-to-5 world, never did, didn't before law school, didn't during law school, didn't after law school. But I don't think it would be fair to say that the law drove us there. That is probably more of our individual pathway of how we want to spend our time. But that said, there's nothing, I would say, there's nothing that prohibits you from putting reasonable boundaries on your career time and your personal time and your hobbies and those other things. Some of us do better at that than others. I personally fail at it miserably. But so I'll let, so Jeff, let me just cycle back around. So Jeff, you've been in big companies. Is it the law that limits that, or is that more of the framework of corporate America?
Well, I mean, obviously you have to go to law school to be a lawyer, but
Right.
Law school also is a visa for mobility in lots of directions. And more specifically to Stephanie's comments, it will make you, even if you're going to be home by 4:30, it'll make you a much better advocate and a much more qualified counselor and clinician, and more effective at your job.
I also, I
And
want to say,
more gratified with your job.
Yeah, Regina, Megan?
I also think it's kind of like, I think of it also like, you know, the difference between doing an undergraduate in liberal arts versus kind of like a specific, like getting a business degree or something like that. Because I think it's the more liberal arts of like, can synthesize things, grab logic, and it doesn't, you know, law covers almost every topic. There's laws written on everything. So whatever you're passionate about, you're just honing, like Jeff said before, a skill set to be able to articulate, argue. Isabel said, be objective. And, you know, so whether you use it to then become advocates or whether you use it to kind of be applied, you don't have to be a lawyer and get stuck in that mindset of it. It makes you just stronger about what your current kind of like role is, or if you decide to change it. So the choice really is yours. And I do think then the boundary setting is kind of like, then again, a personal thing as far as, like, I went to law school, and that was a crazy thing when I tell people, it like set boundaries on me not working longer at my day job, and it gave me another outlet. And that's just kind of like my perhaps unhealthy life balance, but it actually was an outlet for me because I enjoyed it so much, and it gave me kind of like this, you know, whole avenue of like flourishing. So it really kind of like that you have to weigh, I think, on your own about the boundary settings, but that's within your control.
That's right. Regina, I know you've been in a number of things. Nonprofit jobs are not 9 to 5 either. Everybody thinks, oh, I'll just take a low pressure nonprofit ED job because it'll be easy and I just do it during the day.
Right.
Ha, right.
No, not at all. And Stephanie, good for you, because I think many of us have realized in the past year, life is too short. I mean, I think we've had time to reflect. Do we really want to go back to normal? And our time is precious, and you know, you get to a certain point in your life and things can change in a New York minute, and you don't want to spend it saying, why didn't I do this? Why did I spend so much time working? But so good for you for setting those boundaries. I just think having a law degree, it's, as I said earlier, it's so broad. It's so fascinating. Not every aspect of it. You know, as I said, there'll be days when you want to pull your hair out or jump out the first floor window, and then you'll realize, oh, I'm only on the first floor. There I am with my broken wrist. But it's such a rich area of study. And as Dean Winick said, it touches on every aspect. Or, there's been a lawsuit or some case about everything. You're like, really? You brought this to court? But it's just it's so interesting. I mean, I have entertained like going back to revisit certain classes, and then I think, oh, come to your senses, Miss Gage, what's wrong with you? But if you're wavering, you're hesitant, you should be. It's a huge commitment, but we all know how quickly the time flies. And think to yourself, well, what else are you going to be doing in the next 3.5 years? And think of the huge accomplishment it will be for you, not only as a social worker, I don't know if you have your MSW, but to have a JD. That's very prestigious, and no one can ever take that away from you. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
So, Sophia.
Hi, my name is Sophia Marin, and I am from Kern County. And I am probably targeting more Mr. Jackson because I work in the ag industry, and the Valley here in Kern County provides I think around 87% of the world's commodities. So environmental law, ag law is something that I'm targeting. My goal is, however, I don't know, where do I start? I was applying for Texas A&M University School of Law, and they have a master's program there in energy and environmental science, and then environmental law, and then they also have another one for energy, gas, oil and gas law. And so but I'm confused now because I'm not sure if I could just go in town, if I can come here in Kern County instead of having to take specifically online courses in Texas, so that I can get this degree. And at the end, will it be beneficial? Can I use it? Because I'm not sure if it's just a certificate or if I'm just reading it wrong. So are any of you familiar with that, or you specifically, Mr. Jackson?
Well, I can tell you that if you go to law school, you get a tool belt so that you can apply it to those areas of law that are important to you, whether it's environmental or DEI or corporate social responsibility or sustainability. All of those categories will take the same set of tools you learn wherever you go to law school, and then you can put them to work in those areas. And all of those areas are incredibly important now to agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sophia, it's a great question that comes in a lot of flavors. First of all, I'm familiar with Texas A&M School of Law. That was the first place I taught. It was actually called Texas Wesleyan School of Law when I was there in Fort Worth. They're affiliated with Texas A&M, which is, of course, a huge ag university and provides a lot of resources for that. But Jeff's right. Much of your law degree you're going to apply after you graduate. Okay. And the nature of the curriculum is similar. The core curriculum is going to be similar everywhere because it prepares you to sit for the bar. And once you pass the bar, then you can apply it into any industry. I think if I were you, I would compare two things. Looking at the specific curriculum they offer in addition to the core bar exam, and think, can you bring that back to, if you're going to come back to Kern County, for example, will that help you? Or would going to law school somewhere in California, and while you're in law school, using your local connections to go ahead and start working in the ag industry while you're in law school and build those skills along the way. That's in all flavors of the practice of law. You always get that choice. Do I want to do it in school, or do I do it in school while I'm actually starting to work in industry?
Well, I currently work as an adjunct professor for the community college at Bakersfield Community College.
Sure.
And then I'm a research scientist for UC Davis at the corporate extension here. So I travel often to UC Davis for research work. Mm-hmm. So that's why I was wondering if, I know Monterey County, I'm originally from Monterey County. So I know that, I mean, I can make arrangements that way, but I want a program that is specifically online.
Yeah. So Sophia, we've talked a lot about MCL, but I'm happy, as is Dina Dowsett, to talk with you. Reconnect with us. we're
Okay.
happy to spend as much time as you like, not just about our law school, but to help you walk through what's the best law school for you, because that is our goal. We want you, anybody who's thinking about law school, to end up with a good fit, because with a good fit, you'll have a good experience, you'll stay, you'll be successful, and it sets you on the pathways that you've heard here today. So don't hesitate, get back with us. We'll spend as much time as you like walking through these various things.
Okay.
So I see
thank
it's
you.
6:27. Dina is going to be shocked that I came even close to ending on time, but directly on time, because she told me I had to be done by 6:28. Never in the years she's known me have I ever come close to doing that. So I just wanted to shock her tonight. So I'm going to turn this evening back over to Dina. First of all, thank you to all of our panelists. I knew you'd be very illustrative and helpful and passionate about what you do and sharing it with our audience. And I'm sure all of them would welcome further questions. So you can send them to us, we'll forward it on to them. And I know they would get back to you if you didn't have a chance to ask something. So Dina, 6:28, back to you.
I know, I don't even know how to follow up to that, because I'm just shocked. So, but I guess I will just end with thanking everyone for attending, thanking our panelists for providing this really wonderful, useful information. I've had a number of guests privately chat me saying how wonderful this has been, and the information provided has been really wonderful for them, and opening the doors to where they want to take their careers after earning their JD. So, and also thank you, Dean Winick, for starting on time and ending on time. I mean, you're batting 1,000 tonight. So if you have any follow-up questions for those of you who are attending who are not our students, I will follow up with you. And as Dean Winick said, if you have any questions, you are welcome to email me, and I'm happy to pass them on to the panelists. And I will, yes. So with that, thank you very much. And y'all have a good night.